creation, looked at the creation story, and then we discussed a few first, the first family, the first, well, today we're going to talk about some first, in addition to the last ones we saw. So we see how man has began his life on this earth after he was created. And we looked at just the story about it. And as you recall, it didn't tell you the how. It didn't tell you how God made everything. It just says that God spoke and it was created. So we're talking about faith here. And I also submitted to you that if you look at the evolutionist theories, at some point it takes faith to believe those theories. I think the world, when you look at it, demands a creator. I heard this story once, or this joke, I guess it was, men evolved from monkeys and ladies evolved, we're not sure yet. Now, you may find that offensive to say something like that, but then again, I believe God created man and woman. And so when you take God out of the equation, it's really, my view of things is superior to your view. And I'm sure you have a similar opinion of your views. But yet when we let God be our standard, we have something to agree upon, something to work with. During the creation process, you saw that God said it was good. It was very good when he was all said and done. Have you ever heard some women say that men are knuckleheads? God didn't make no junk. Have you ever heard men talk about how the lack of intelligence in women? Men, God made no junk. So when we look at each other, when we work together with each other, I have to remember God created man and woman. God made no junk. He called it very good. And when I, at times in my weak, frail, angry moments, began to think badly of other people, I have to pull myself back and realize that God created man and woman. And so our challenge ahead of us, for both of us, is how do we live together, work together, and love one another? Thus the message. Let us have a prayer before we get started to these first things of first families. Father in heaven, we're so thankful that we have this moment to gather in this location to worship you, to study your word, to be with one another, and to show regard and love for each other. We're so grateful for the blessings that you gave us, especially as we study this epic of yours, this creation that you give us information about, that we may be inspired to worship you, to live for you, and to always be amazed by your creation. Forgive us of our sins. Guide us as we go forward. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. If you turn over to Genesis 4th chapter, we're going to start there. We have some first things that we're kind of starting, like first family. And unfortunately, first murder, if you will. And then we're going to look at Adam's family history in Genesis 5. I find this very fascinating when I read through this particular section. It starts out in verse 1. Adam knew his wife, Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. Cain is the firstborn. Eve said, "With the Lord's help, I have given birth to a man." After that, Eve gave birth to Cain's brother, Abel. Abel took care of flocks, and Cain became a farmer. Now, I've heard people when I was growing up says, I'm a farmer and God blessed me to be that way. I love farmers because I like to eat. I don't think anyone here disregards farmers in any way because we all like to eat. But that doesn't make a farmer any more righteous, if you will, than a person that herds flocks. I like hamburgers. You know, I like folks that herd animals. So I like both of them. So I've heard some people suggest that Cain became so full of himself because he was a farmer. I don't think so. I think these are just two individuals, Cain and Abel, two brothers. I've heard plenty of sermons about how Cain and Abel were at each other like two brothers. I'm not sure what that means. I never had a brother, so I can't relate to that. Supposedly brothers fight. Is that true? Those of you who have brothers that are brothers? Yeah. Are there any brothers whose experience with their other brother was that of a loving relationship? Depends on the what? Depends on the brother, yes. You know, I've seen some brothers who say, yeah, we fought all the time, but I love him. That's a loving relationship. I've seen others that we never fought, but we sure got along. We just love to be around each other. I don't know what relationship that Cain and Abel, I don't know what they were doing when they were growing up. I don't know if they shared their toys or if Eve had to go, okay, Cain, share with Abel, Abel, share with Cain. I don't know. But Cain and Abel were not the best of kids, apparently. They might have been the best of kids. But when they became, later, in verse 3, later Cain brought some food from the ground as a gift to God. Abel brought the best parts of some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. So Cain became very angry and felt rejected. Well, let's see it from Cain's point of view. God, creator of man and woman, rejected my gift. Have you ever had a gift rejected? Have you ever tried to give somebody a gift and they say, I don't want that. I don't like that. During Christmas time, what are we told by our parents? Aunt Martha gives you a gift. What do? A pair of socks. And you wanted that Tinker toy, Tonka truck. What do? You what? You thank them. And you look happy with it. You express appreciation. What?
I have receipts.
You have receipts? Nowadays you give them a receipt. If you don't like it, go change it out. Abel brought the best parts. I've heard some people say, well, they were just guessing. Abel and Cain just guessed. Well, that's speculative reasoning because we have no indication that they did, that he, at this point in the reading, that he guessed. I personally think there is implied that they knew what to bring to God. It's just that Abel felt that he could bring something different. Anybody else have a different thought?
I kind of think Cain held back.
He held back. Why would he want to hold back, you think? Give a bushel of grain. And he knew how much work went into getting that bushel of grain. And he didn't want to give it or did want to give it? He didn't want to? He had some hesitancy in giving it, possibly. Yeah.
Because of always.
Right.
That's right. That's true. But that's just
Right. It's a question of. Linda's talking about the firstborn is kind of from the old law, but there is no law at this point. The only information we have is that they brought gifts to God, and God was pleased with one over the other. Now, you can make the assumption that God said, bring me a gift, you guess it, and I'll tell you if you got it. Yep. What'd you say? It's a blood sacrifice he wanted, but he hadn't told him yet. That's correct. And how do we don't know? I can play the game too. We just don't know, and we can speculate from our own, references. I believe that God said to them what he wanted, but I can't prove that. Well, Abel brought a gift of let's see, what was his gift? Abel brought best parts of the Lord. Cain brought some food from the ground. And are you hinging on the fact that it says some food? Okay. See, I don't necessarily take it that way, but he brought, I believe, what he thought was the best of the ground. He knew how much work it went into it. It's just that it wasn't accepted. Yes? Right. Right. There seems to be a difference, doesn't there? Right. Yeah. When you say of the heart, was it of the heart because he was rejected, or of the heart because his brother was accepted? Yeah, and he gave some of the food. I don't know if it was like the end of the harvest or the beginning of the harvest. It doesn't say. No, it just says some. And so we extrapolate that he didn't offer the best. See? Yeah, there's a lot of speculation. We just barely got into this chapter, didn't we? And I love this story because everything you've brought forward is more speculative reasoning, which makes sense. But Cain brought some food as a gift to God. Shouldn't God have been grateful for that gift he brought? Could be attitude. We extrapolate a lot when it says some food or just food, whereas Abel brought the best. We extrapolate there. But either way, you can take a lot of sermons from here and stay in this one verse, and I can spend 45 minutes having a sermon. We won't do that, though. George? Seems that way, doesn't it? Some have said that God didn't tell them. Others have concluded that God had to have told them what to bring. But we don't know exactly from this passage what happened. But what we do know is if we stick right into what is being said here, as opposed to going off on these other areas, is that Cain became very angry and felt rejected. And if you keep it in that context, he was upset about the fact that God rejected his offer, his gift. Would we agree with that? So that's the basis of his anger. And you can go back and talk about attitude. You can talk about Abel was more worshipful than Cain, but the point is that Cain became angry and felt rejected. The Lord asked Cain, "Why are you angry?" Have you ever been asked that? Why do you look so unhappy? If you do things well, I will accept you, but if you do not do them well, sin is ready to attack you. Sin wants you, but you must rule over it. Now here's God telling Cain this stuff. What did God just get through doing? He created the world. He created man and woman. He has given everything, He's created this area, this ground that Cain is, that Cain is farming, and he says that sin is ready to attack you. Started with anger. I'm angry because God rejected my gift. What would you have done? All you reasonable people out here, what would you have done if God had said that to you? Why are you angry and unhappy? What would you do? What's that? Make an excuse? Blake? Yep, make an excuse. He's trying to justify himself. And that's what he's unhappy, he's angry because his way, God rejected. Larry? A good heart would cause you to want to do the right thing. Lord, what did I do? How can I be better? And so we'll see Cain's response in a minute. You haven't seen this yet. It's a thriller right now. Right. Yeah, if you do well, your countenance will be lifted. So a rational person would say, how can I do better? Correct. Yeah, to improve it. So he made it about him and his brother, and not about him and God. And so in verse 8, Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out into the field. While they were out in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Which way do you think Cain went? He certainly didn't say, Lord, how can I do well? Now this is pretty tragic, isn't it? This is best I can tell, one of the first tragic moments between human beings, and we have talked about this for ages. There have been plenty of sermons on it. There are plenty of books written about it. It's alluded to in many films that come out about the storyline, brotherly love or lack of it. And Cain kills Abel. Later the Lord said to Cain, where's your brother, Abel? You ever been asked by somebody where somebody is? And you know, but you don't want to tell? Now, I'm hoping you've not murdered somebody and been asked that question, okay? But I'm trying to give you the feeling that must have gone through Cain. Anger got him. It boiled through him. He invited his brother to go into the field. Why would you want to go into the field? There's some logic here, that reason why you want to. Why would you go to the field like that? There are no witnesses. So you take it out to the field. How many people were on the earth at this time? You could probably find a vacant spot on this planet at that time. If you wanted to live in the country, you could have found it. And you didn't have to go far. And so he went to the field because there'd be no witnesses. And that anger caused him to decide to kill Abel. Cain answered, I don't know. Is it my job to take care of my brother? Somebody has King James Version. Read that. Go ahead and read it. Verse 9. Am I my brother's keeper? How many sermons have you heard about that? Everybody has heard a sermon or two about that. There is Promise Keepers, My Brother's Keepers organizations come about. What is the intent of those organizations? Brotherly love, taking care of others. Cain killed Abel, and he responded with, Am I my brother's keeper? Then the Lord said, What have you done? Now, kind of stop here for a second. I just want to do a sanity check. Doesn't Cain know he's talking to God? I mean, God knows everything, right? Doesn't Cain know this? Hasn't he sat at the hearth with Adam and Eve talking about, hey, where did we come from, Mama? You know, can you imagine the story? Have you ever had your children ask you, where do we come from? Now you start telling them about the birds and the bees, and then they say something to the effect, well, Johnny says he's from Chicago. You know, what did Cain know about God? And so God is asking him, what have you done? Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And now you will be cursed in your work with the ground, the same ground where your brother's blood fell and where your hands killed him. You will work the ground, but it will not grow good crops for you anymore. You will wander around the earth. From this point on, however you want to describe it, the ground did not respond to Cain's work like it once did. And so when you go back up to verse 3 where it says Cain brought some food, well, he must have been a pretty good gardener at that time. Because now the ground is not going to work for him like it used to. I'm happy when something comes out of the ground. We just cleared out our garden yesterday. It's a 4x8. It took all of however minutes. Well, actually, my wife did it. I was chopping down a tree. But still, we cleared it out, and we were happy. But for Cain, the ground that he's going to work, it's not going to work as well as it used to. It's not going to respond to his care. Then Cain said to the Lord in verse 13, the punishment is more than I can stand, he says. Now you can stop here for a moment too, you know. If you've ever visited with somebody who's been in prison or gotten caught doing something and the consequences of their decision causes them to have all these issues come about them, and have you ever heard anybody say to them, well, you should have thought of that before you... Anybody ever been told that before? Yep. Anybody ever said, yes, I wish I had have thought of that? I think we all have. And so Cain here, this punishment is more than I can stand. Today you have forced me to stop working the ground, and now I must hide from you. I must wander around on the earth, and anyone who meets me can kill me. Now he's worried about killing. It's interesting how if I'm killing you, it's okay, but if you're killing me, it's not okay. I mean, think about how sometimes we feel that I can do something, but somebody else can't do something. And it's all because of our heart that we referred to. because I'm wiser than you, you're wiser than me. But yet God's standard is where we need to come back to. God's standard is where we need to settle on and agree on. If Cain had been on God's standard, he would have asked him, how can I do better? He would have known to do better. He would have been concerned about his brother. He might have even gone to his brother and said, hey, here's some veggies. Can I have one of your firstborn? You know, maybe his attitude could have been better because I love God and I know He's the creator. Because Mama told me, Mama Eve told me, sitting around campfires, about that garden God created for him before she offered the apple or whatever that fruit was to her husband after Satan tempted her. Cain should have known. He sat around the same hearth that Abel did. He sat around he had the same parents. He walked through the garden hand in hand with the same parents that Abel did, that God created. But yet, his heart changed somewhere along the line. And now he's worried about someone killing him. The Lord said to Cain, no, if anyone kills you, I will punish that person 7 times more. I'm not sure what 7 times more is. Anybody got an idea how God will punish somebody 7 times more? I'm open for suggestions. One time God punished me should be enough. But what's 7 times mean? A complete punishment. Okay. The number 7 might have something to do about a complete punishment. Yeah. You could apply it that way, but either way, it's going to hurt. 7 generations maybe. Yeah. Right. In Cain's case, right? Yeah. Well, and of course with Job, the devil was running around and saw it, and God said, "Consider my servant Job," and he got a little bit of focus by Satan for a while. Yes. Well, we're going to see next chapter here in a little bit some of that question. But yeah, that's always comes up is who were these other people? Now you got to remember that Cain and Abel were how old whenever this altercation took place? If I can give it a nice name. How old do you think they were? How many? I heard 30, 50, 60, 100. I'm not certain how old they were, but we're going to see next chapter some ideas about how old people lived. You already have you've already studied some of these numbers, but I don't know how old Cain and Abel were at this point. It doesn't give us any clue as to whether they actually had a large family at this time, with a lot of great grandkids running around, hanging out at Grandma Eve's place. We don't have that information. We can speculate though, but we just don't have that information. Huh? Well, Seth did replace him, but we don't have any indication that Abel didn't have any kids. Speculation, yes, maybe, I don't know. But I can't definitively say that Abel did not have any, we're just not told. So you could say they were 30, they were 50. They were a certain age to where they were herding flocks, or Abel was, and Cain was tilling the ground. Anybody ever, back in those days, they would have used a big John Deere tractor, wouldn't they? No, they would have done something a little less than that. Has anyone ever plowed with a mule and a plow? You have you? It's easy, isn't it? If you didn't see that, he's laughing. All right. Wes has plowed with the mule in a plow. My grandfather did it. I watched him. I was too little to try it.
Mississippi, they pulled the plow. Put the corn on.
Yep.
Family.
Right.
Plow.
It was an agrarian society. Everybody had to work together to plant and harvest.
I didn't actually plow, but I had a gee whiz.
And a gee whiz is?
Bring to the sparrow.
Anybody can translate that? Is that where they do grass and stuff like that? No? Cultivator. Okay, I'll look that up. I'll Google that later. So in verse 16. So Cain went away from the Lord and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. He knew his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. So here we are indicated that Cain had a wife. So he gave birth to Enoch, the Enoch that we're going to meet in a little bit. At that time, Cain was building a city which he named after his son Enoch. Enoch had a son named Ired. Ired had a son named Mahulah. How do you like that? Mahulah had a son named Methuselah. Methuselah had a son named Lamech. Lamech married two women, Ada and Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal, who became the first person to live in tents and raise cattle. Now, this is the beginning of the RVing days. How many people you know live in a trailer, have a trailer, run around, fun things? This is when it started. Just kidding. Jabal's brother was Jubal, the first person to play the harp and flute. I like this passage. We had to read this one because this is the first indication of musical instruments coming about. And so this is just cool that this was something that is mentioned in the Word of God. Zillah gave birth to Tubal-Cain, who made tools out of bronze and iron. The sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. Listen to what I say. I killed a man for wounding me, a young man for hitting me. If Cain's killer is punished 7 times, then Lamech's killer will be punished 77 times. Seems to run in the family, doesn't it? Verse 25, Adam knew his wife Eve again. She gave birth to a son. She named him Seth and said, God has given me another child. He will take the place of Abel, who was killed by Cain. Seth also had a son. They named him Enosh. And at that time, people began to pray to the Lord. Yes, here it clearly says that Seth replaced Abel, but there's no indication that Abel didn't have a family. I mean, all of a sudden we found out that Cain had a wife. Where'd that come from? So, what? Yeah, could have been, should have been, or was probably. I mean, that's the logical conclusion. Chapter 5. Let's see. All right. In text format, this is cool. If you like numbers, this is kind of just neat. This is the family history of Adam. When God created human beings, He made them in His own likeness. He created them male and female, and on that day He blessed them and named them as human beings. Yours may say a little bit different. I'm reading the New Century Version. But God called us what we were, what we are. When Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of another son in his likeness and image, and Adam named him Seth. Adam was 130 years old. I'm only 61. I'm not having kids, okay? Done. He was 130 years old when he had a child, Seth. So that means, now I'm just doing some reasoning here. That means he was a little younger than 130 when he had Cain and Abel. Exactly when? I don't know. After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. So Adam lived a total of 930 years, and then he died. How many kids can you have in 800 years? Now, if it doesn't say how, right now at least, it's not telling me how old Eve was when she died. But it doesn't say he had more wives. It just said Adam had. So I'm going to make the assumption Eve was the mother of all those children. When Seth was 105 years old, he had a son named Enosh. After Enosh was born, Seth lived 807 years and had other sons and daughters. There's a theme here. You're going to see this over and over. He had other sons and daughters. So Seth lived a total of 912 years, and then he died. So if you're keeping track of this, I encourage you to, writing down, but I got a chart here after these next two slides that'll bring it into a perspective that I think you'll appreciate. When Enosh was 90 years old, he had a son named Kenan. Now, I don't know if that's his first child or not, but we'll see something here in a little bit. After Kenan was born, Enosh lived 815 years and had other sons and daughters. So Enosh lived a total of 905 years, and then he died. When Kenan was 70 years old, he had a son named Mahaliel was born. After he was born, Kenan lived 840 years and had other sons and daughters. So Kenan lived a total of 910 years, and then he died. When Mahaliel was 65 years old, he had a son named Jared. Finally, a name I can pronounce. After Jared was born, Mahaliel lived 830 years and had other sons and daughters. So Mahaliel lived a total of 962 years, and then he died. When Jared was 162 years old, he had a son named Enoch. After Enoch was born, Jared lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. So Jared lived a total of 962 years, and then he died. When Enoch was 65 years old, he had a son named, let's see, don't get lost here, Methuselah. There we go. After Methuselah was born, Enoch walked with God 300 years more and had other sons and daughters. So Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked with God. One day Enoch could not be found because God took him. Okay, let's take this to a fun conclusion, okay? When Methuselah was 187 years old, he had a son named Lamech. After Lamech was born, Methuselah lived 782 years and had other sons and daughters. So Methuselah lived a total of 969 years, and then he died. When Lamech was 182, he had a son. Lamech named his son Noah. Oh, this is cool, isn't it? Noah. And said, "He will comfort us in our work, which comes from the ground the Lord has cursed." After Noah was born, Lamech lived 595 years and had other sons and daughters. So Lamech lived a total of 777 years, and then he died. After Noah was 500 years old, this number is amazing, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. 500 years old. Here's the chart. You will notice Adam lives to about right here. Look at all of these contemporaries. They would have known great-great-grandpa Adam. They would have heard the creation story. They would have heard his experience. They would have heard the story about Cain and Abel. How many children, here's a math problem, how many children can all these people have in the number of years that they lived? A lot. There was a bunch of them. All right? The number of people on earth began to grow, chapter 6, and daughters were born to them. And when the sons of God saw that the girls were beautiful, they married any of them they chose. The Lord said, My spirit will not remain in human beings forever because they are flesh. They will live only 120 years. The Naphtali were on the earth in those days also later. That was when the sons of God had relations with the daughters of human beings. These women gave birth to children who became famous and were mighty warriors of long ago. And there's a great controversy in that paragraph. Who are the Naphtali? We won't go into that. The Lord saw that the human beings on the earth were very wicked and that everything they thought about was evil. He was sorry he had made human beings on the earth. His heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will destroy all human beings that I've made on the earth, and I will destroy every animal and everything that crawls on the earth and the birds of the air, because I am sorry I have made them. But Noah pleased God. Noah pleased the Lord. So after all that anger, there's Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. Noah pleased God. Who were the Naphtali? I don't know. But I do know this. After the flood, they were gone. We can debate what they were, who they were, or what they did. It just says they were. But what's so cool about it is these people were all aware of Adam. Noah went 500 years when he had Shem, Ham, and his 3 sons. There was a lot of time there. What's our lifespan? Around 100-ish, less than 100. I just can't see having a son at 65. But these men did. His family did. What an amazing God we have. That he could create man and woman, Adam and Eve, and the earth takes off like this. I'm not sure how much minutes we got, maybe 1 or 2. Sorry I had to rush that last part. But you have any quick comments? Yeah. There's a lot of, did they marry daughters? Their sisters? Probably. I mean, there's no other way to conclude that. No other way to conclude that. Thank you for your attention.